What does it mean to speak your truth to power? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's not the first thing that comes to mind. It's not even the thing that's weighing heavily on your heart sometimes. Your truth goes deeper than that. And that's why it's powerful, and that's why it makes you powerful. When I look back over the course of my career, I can see that at the core of every single professional advancement opportunity I've had, I spoke my truth to power. And I'm not alone. I see this work for my clients when we work on this skill with them. And I've been told by 72% of you who responded to a recent internet survey that I fielded that you too have been professionally rewarded when you spoke your truth to power. Now, that same survey revealed the other thing that we all know, which is that there's not always a happy ending. Sometimes we speak our truth to power and encounter a penalty instead. 82% of the survey respondents said they'd been penalized for speaking their truth. So here we have a real dilemma. 72% were rewarded, 82% experienced penalty. Clearly, somewhere in the middle there is an opportunity to learn an important professional development skill. But here's why this particular subject is more important than your average career skill like negotiating effectively. When you speak your truth to power, you're speaking your truth. And your truth goes to the core of who you are. Your truth brings your unique wisdom into the world. And our world needs your wisdom. When you speak your truth to power, you're living in total integrity and alignment with who you are. At the office and at home. Every day, all day, for the rest of your life. This is more than a career at skill. This is a personal power skill that helps you be powerful in ways that no one can ever take away from you. Now, it's also a subtle art, and those that master it are much more on the reward side than the penalty side, for sure. And they're also living a more integrated, aligned life. I want that skill for you. I want the world to hear your wisdom. So I've put together this video series and other materials on my website, empowercoaching.com, to help us explore the deeper dimensions of truth and this subtle art of truth-telling. We're going to explore in this video series what are the 3 cultural myths we're all taught as children about truth and about truth-telling. And we're going to see how those myths now tend to confuse us as adults when we go to speak our truth to those in power in our lives. We're going to learn to overcome those myths and to be even more powerful in speaking our truth. What does your truth look like? Well, let's start by understanding that it's tied to your beliefs and your values. That you're willing to stand by your truth publicly, without apology and without qualification. When you speak your truth, you're taking a stand. You're taking a stand for something that matters. And when you speak your truth, your power, your active power, is in giving other people a choice in how to respond. When you speak your truth, you become the stone in the stream. They can move around you or they can move over you, but they're not moving through you. Now, this can be a risky situation because when you give other people a choice, their free will takes over and they can choose, which is why if you're going to speak your truth, you need to make sure it's something worth risking. That whatever the subject is worth the risk you're going to take in speaking it. This is why your truth isn't just about facts. Facts are first come, first serve. You can certainly be useful in a conversation because you know facts that other people don't, but if they happen to know them first, you have no advantage. Your truth is not about facts. It's about your judgment about those facts. Your truth is not thoughts and emotions that aren't tied to your core beliefs and values, because you shouldn't take a stand for something that isn't tied to your beliefs and values. That makes you vulnerable, not powerful. It's not about your ego. If the main result of speaking your truth is your ego gets stroked, or you get ahead and everybody else gets behind, everybody sees through that right away. And if that is tied to your beliefs and values, then you have lost respect in their eyes because they believe your values are only tied to you. So when you speak your truth, ensure that you're tying it to your beliefs and values. Ensure that you're ready to take a stand and take a risk. Because when you speak your truth and you give other people the choice to respond, you have taken a step into power. And even when you don't get your way, other people respect that tremendously. And you never know how it's going to pay off in the future. Now, you may notice here that we're talking about truth in a very specific way, a very personal way, a personal truth, my truth, your truth. Not necessarily in the context of universal truths like we would encounter if we were talking about religion or philosophy or science. And we will discuss some of those universal truths and how they impact our truth-telling ability personally later in this video and in other videos. But I want to delve deeper into this idea of personal truth and look at how it's connected to beliefs and values and risk, and give you a personal example to show you how those things are at play when we have an opportunity to speak our truth. A few years ago, I was hired by an organization, the CEO, to help them put a strategic plan, a strategic policy in place to deal with social media. And social media was new at that point. It was becoming a thing, and nobody really knew how to adapt to it. So I took a look at their culture. I took a look at their past experience with media relations, and I saw that they had one big challenge, and that was that they had a media relations policy in place that had been adopted by their board a long time ago that was going to inhibit their staff's ability to be transparent and authentic in the media, and particularly with social media. And we know that social media rewards authenticity and transparency, so I went to them and I said, I think you should change this policy. And the CEO looked at me and he said, I think you should rethink your recommendation. The board is not going to go for that. And he explained why the board had that policy. And they weren't evil people. They were actually adhering to best practices that had been true before social media. And I said, all right, let me go do some more research on that. And I did go back and do some more research. But more importantly, I took this recommendation, which was an idea I had at that point, and I converted it into my truth. What was my truth for this contract that I could live in integrity with? Was I willing to take a stand when I knew the CEO wasn't supportive? And the first thing I did was look at my beliefs. And again, I'm not talking about religious and scientific and philosophical beliefs here. I'm looking at what I believed would happen if they did not change their policy, what I believed would happen if they did change their policy based on research and evidence that I had done. I took a look at the values at play. Primary value was transparency, not honesty, transparency. And how did I believe that would be valued by their stakeholder community? How did I value it? I value it very highly, and I believed that their stakeholder community valued it highly as well. And finally, I took a look at the risk, and I saw that this situation was fraught with risk for me and for them. And I thought about just letting it all go. Let the CEO be right. But I didn't feel right about that. I didn't think that would be giving them my best advice. And frankly, I value transparency. I wanted to see this organization be more transparent for them, for their stakeholder community, for their media relations effort, and for me. I recognize they might not take my recommendation and terminate my contract. Or they might take my recommendation, ask me to stay on and implement a policy I didn't believe in. These were all potential outcomes that I had to sort of think through and be ready for, and I did. I went back and I met with the CEO and the chairman of the board this time, and I made the same recommendation that they change their policy. And I laid out all my rationale and what I believed was true and the evidence for that, and what values I believed were at play here for them. And I held my breath because I had now given them the choice as to how to respond. And the CEO kind of looked at the chairman and waited, see what she would say. And the chairman sat back and took it all in and said, I don't think we've ever thought about it this way. Let's take it to the board. So I presented this truth to the board, this recommendation that was founded on my truth. And we had a very lively discussion with representatives from 25 of the biggest corporations in the world sitting in the room. And at the end of the day, they bought it. Now, it's important to recognize they didn't take my recommendation hook, line, and sinker. They didn't adapt it and implement it in exactly the way that I recommended, which is completely fine because they had to take what was my truth for them and convert it into their truth for them. What I had done is given them my wisdom and given them the opportunity to adapt it into their reality. This is where the power of our truth comes from. It's not from being right. It's from giving them a choice and the ability to change their direction on principled grounds and to feel really good about it. Not only did I do a good job for them on the contract, which I did, and I was rewarded with many other opportunities to work with them in the future, which I appreciated, I gained power in that situation. I gained power with those people for being willing to take a stand and to base it on things as deep as beliefs and values. I gained power personally because I was acting more in integrity personally with myself, and it was one step of many on my journey to acting more and more in integrity that I benefit from to this day. And it wasn't because I was right. It was because I created an opportunity for them to take my truth and turn it into their truth. And that's where the power in speaking our truth comes from. Not from being right, but from changing the world. But let me tell you the real reason that I think you should learn to speak your truth now. Only you can speak your truth, ever. I can't speak it. Your colleagues can't speak it. It's yours, and it's only yours. And every time you bite your tongue, unless you're holding your truth in silence, in integrity, which you should do sometimes for certain reasons, then the world is missing out on the unique wisdom that you have to give it. We're missing out on the choices you're giving us the opportunity to make. We're missing out on the potential change that you being in power can create in our world. And that's a terrible lost opportunity to me. I believe the world needs to hear your wisdom. I want to hear your wisdom. And that's why I invite you on this journey to learn to speak your truth to power in an effective way, because I want to hear what you have to say. If we just stop here, we are ignoring something very important that we all struggle against and that inhibits our ability to be successful speaking our truth and owning it. And these are what I call the 3 myths of speaking truth. And these are cultural myths that we're all taught as children. And we're taught them for good reasons, to help us deal in the world more effectively. I'm talking about myths like truth is universal, that what is true for one is true for all, or that the opposite of true is false, or that the enemy of truth is lies. Now, certainly there's truth to these truths that help us function as children and as adults, but if we try to hold on to these simplistic understandings of what truth and truth-telling is as adults, they trip us up. They put us in situations that are confusing when we're dealing with each other. We'll put each other on the defensive without even trying, or often even when we're not trying to. They separate us from our own truth and authenticity quite often. And we have to look beneath the myths and look at the realities of truth and truth-telling to begin to untangle the reasons that truth-telling can be difficult. What am I talking about with the realities? Well, the truth is not always universal. Quite often, my truth and your truth may be different. And in that difference is great power for both of us. The opposite of true isn't always false. Quite often it's fear. When we're not in our truth state, we're in a state of fear. We never act powerfully in a state of fear. And finally, the enemy of truth is not always lies. Quite often it's expectation, and underneath that, our need to be right. When we speak believing the myth that we must be right, we immediately put our audience on the defensive. We poke the boss in the ego. We make it very hard for them to hear our truth. And there are ways to learn to uncover these myths, to explore these dimensions in our own life and in our own world, and to release the fears and to release the expectations that we have. But we do have to look at it critically and learn these skills. I hope you'll take advantage of the next video that explores these themes more deeply. And I hope you'll go to my website, empowercoaching.com, for other resources there. I hope you'll speak your truth to me. I want to hear it. I want everyone to hear it.